Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and it's time for part 3 of this series discussing just the basics of the conjugate method. And again, this is based upon my experience, the way I do it. It's not necessarily a replacement for anything that someone like Louis Simmons or any of the experts out there who work with this similar type of method do. This is just my own perspective on it. So today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about the repetition method. Now we covered max effort, dynamic effort. Now we're going to talk about the repetition effort method. And what this is to fill in all the various weak links. And here's one of the big mistakes a lot of people make who try to use a system of training. And I know this firsthand. One of the biggest mistakes I did when I messed with this for a while myself was that I only did the other two methods. And I didn't incorporate very much, if any, of the repetition effort method. And accordingly, it didn't get the best results. This is actually a fundamental part of this system of training, because if you only look at the other two, this looks like basically a low volume style of training. And the reality is that it's not. And the way people run this who do this, they do very, very large volumes of training. And what ends up happening is that they actually treat this system of training similar to how, say, a bodybuilder or someone who's into physique stuff would treat it. They basically take all their weak links and wherever they're smallest and weakest or whatever muscle groups they realize are limiting them on getting stronger, and they come in and do a large amount of training volume for it. Now, the reason you do this is because it's just a simply efficient use of your time and training resources. When you're dealing with various lagging body parts, and it's usually multiple ones, because you're trying to get as big as possible. You're trying to get as big as possible, always, if you want to be as strong as possible. And if you're worried about making a weight class, you just cut down and get leaner, right? Just lose body fat. It's always better to have an extra 5 pounds of muscle and 5 pounds less fat if you're going to be stuck in a given weight class. If you're getting close to outgrowing that class, it's not really a big deal. But generally speaking, size equals strength. Now, the argument would be, well, does it carry over as well as really heavy training does? Well, no, but you're already doing really heavy training. So if you're already doing really heavy training, you're already getting your max effort in, you're already getting your dynamic effort in, size becomes your next priority. And so with the repetition effort, what you're trying to do is to get very high volumes of training in a fairly short period of time. The other lifting takes up a lot of your time already. So the repetition effort method is there to put in large amounts of training volume for everything that could possibly be lagging. So in the case you see me up there in the background doing belt squats, that's to help with my quads. And you see me here doing sets of 12 on these. Then you'll notice with some of the other smaller exercises, I'm going even further than that. Some of these are over 20 rep sets to failure. So what you're doing is going in and doing everything from bigger multi-joint exercises, such as these belt squats, or an incline bench press, which you also see me doing, tricep work, delt work, ab work, hamstring work, all these different muscle groups through combinations of different accessory movements, because these are accessory movements, right? In other words, if it doesn't have a direct motor pattern carry over to the primary lift, is an accessory movement, right? You tend to do the repetition method with accessory movements, exercises that are intended to thicken everything up. And you're not worried about maximizing your strength on these. And what I mean is low rep strength, 1 rep max strength, because you're never going to do these exercises to a 1 rep max. Well, some of them you might, like the incline. If it's a weak point for you, you might do that during some of the max effort training. But generally speaking, this sort of exercises are going to be left to thicken you up. And that's the idea. That is kind of the final piece to a system of training like this to making it work, because now we're dealing with the other elements of it. We're dealing with work capacity, training volumes, all of these things that we need to add in to ensure that you get as big as possible. Now, the thing is, the other stuff like the speed work can actually make you grow pretty well, but you're not going to maximize your size doing that. And it kind of comes back to the point that maximum size equals maximum strength. You cannot separate the two. So if you want to be as strong as possible, you need to have as much muscle in your frame as possible. And ideally, any muscle that looks like it could be even close to being a limiting factor on your classic lifts, you need to do large amounts of training volume for. You need it to grow. You need it to be bigger so it can have the potential for more force production. And so with this, you would come through and you end up doing very large amounts of volumes of training. And on the really small exercises, you'll take them all the way to failure. Bigger ones, you might not. Again, like a belt squat, an incline bench, even a JM press or various rows, you might not take those to failure because they're too fatiguing to your recovery. But smaller exercises, like again, maybe some tricep extensions. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And so the repetition effort method is there for you to add in all your accessory movements. And these can be done, in some cases, you can rotate out your dynamic effort day for some of these on bigger exercises, but generally they're done as additional exercises. So after you've done all your big movements, these exercises are incorporated. And it's not to say you can't do lower rep training with some of your accessory movements on especially the heavier days, because you can, but this is a third critical component, because you have to get bigger. You have to get bigger. And one of the easiest ways to get bigger in terms of time efficiency is high rep training. High rep, high volume training, preferably with again, relatively low rest times. Within reason. Again, you're not trying to do 30-second or 60-second rest times always like a bodybuilder does, but even then, you're not necessarily losing anything if you do, because if you're already getting stronger and gaining most of your strength from your bigger lifts, a lot of this stuff doesn't matter from a performance perspective. You're just trying to come in and create fatigue. And that's the idea. The same way that a bodybuilder might train like this almost exclusively, if you need to get bigger and fill out your weight class or get as thick as possible for your frame, coming in and taking multiple muscle groups and training in this way after all of your other stuff is done can be extremely beneficial. And in fact, if you don't do all this, you're not going to glean all the benefits of this system of training, right? Because what is it that we always say? Size equals strength. And we can work on the maximum strength, which again is utilizing all the muscle fibers that you've built with the other training. But if you want to ensure that you're as big as possible, then you need to be doing a lot of the higher rep training too. You need to add this stuff in. Again, if you're an advanced lifter, the novice lifter, this stuff doesn't matter, but this sort of training is not for a novice lifter. This is usually for very advanced lifters who have a strength base who are now saying, okay, it's time for me to bring all this up another notch, come up another level. And again, this is not necessarily a system of training that I would add for a novice lifter. It's not necessary. But as you get more advanced and your minimum effective volume to cause significant hypertrophy in a muscle goes up, this becomes a valuable tool as the third leg of your training. It becomes a valuable tool. So again, the idea here is to come in and do high rep training, 10s, 15s, 20s, 25s on various muscles that you know are limiting your performance. And it can be big muscles, it can be small muscles. Some of this can be done again with bigger multi-joint exercises like the belt squat. Other times with smaller exercises like these band tricep press downs. But the idea here is to pick exercises that have a high muscle stimulus with low fatigue. In other words, you don't want to pick exercises for this that are going to have axial loading. I mean, that's one of the things you've got to think about with this, because you're trying to do very high volumes of training added in on top of a training system in which you're already doing very, very heavy max effort work. We're trying to get the most bang for our buck out of this. We want to be able to do the highest volumes of training for everything that's possibly lagging to get as big and as thick as possible while interfering with recovery the least. So fluff movements that we think of as the least effective movements for a general size and strength program become extremely valuable at this point. This is where these sort of exercises shine. Literally thinking in the terms of the way a bodybuilder will, but not thinking, hey, this is where I need to train to get aesthetic. It's thinking, where do I need to grow to get my strength up? What muscles do I need to hypertrophy more to bring my squat up? What do I need to work on to bring my bench up? What do I need to work on to bring my deadlift up? And in some cases, it's going, what do I need to do to bring up even my assistance movements, right? because it's not even always about your main lift anymore. You could be going, okay, what do I need to work on to help with my assistance movements? Because if your assistance movements that are there to help correct your primary exercises and make you stronger, those, if they have weak links in them that can be addressed with a smaller movement, that weak link is very possibly a weak link in your main exercise as well. So it could be something as simple as your triceps, or something as simple as your thoracic erectors or your hamstrings, in which case you would come in and select exercises that will hit all of those weak points and hypertrophy them and thicken them up. And failure to do this will cause this system, for people who are not just extremely gifted, it will cause it to fail. This is a critical part to this training system, at least for the advanced lifter who has already built a base and they're now dealing with the potential for stalling. And this is how you prevent yourself from stalling, by coming in and throwing very large volumes of training targeted at various muscles that are your weak links, and ensuring that your weak links are continuing to grow to keep pace with your strength and your speed gains from the other training. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.